What's up? Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. I'm Trevor, and today we are doing our Big 12 power rankings for Week 11. Now, last week our power rankings didn't really change much from the prior week, but we had a very exciting, very interesting weekend of college football in the Big 12 this last weekend, and we see a lot of change up in our power rankings. However, there's still a very clear delineation between the top half, the top 7 of the conference, and the bottom 7. Not a lot of mix up there, but within those two groups, we see a lot of shifting. So let's get into it. But before we do, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. We do our power rankings. We do other videos of predictions. We do live reactions each week, all these videos. So please subscribe, and then you can catch all of that. So anyway, without further ado, let's jump into it. So for the second week in a row, we have a new team on top of our power rankings. This week it is Oklahoma State with a win over their longtime rival Oklahoma in what very well could be the last bedlam, at least in football, that we will ever see. Oklahoma State did what they had to pull out the win. And this is just astonishing considering how they started the season, playing 3 quarterbacks, looking completely lost and pedestrian, and even losing at home to South Alabama. And somehow they've flipped the switch, and Mike Gundy is doing an incredible job coaching. That has to be on coaching to be able to go from how bad they were, which maybe that was an indictment on coaching too, but to where they are now is just incredible. And Oklahoma State deserves to be on top after beating a very good Oklahoma team in what was a very crucial game. Felt like one they really had to have, and they really wanted that one in this final matchup. So good for them. And they've already exceeded their over-under from before the season. At number 2, we have Texas. Now, I struggled putting them here because they do look like they've struggled a bit since losing Ewers, and with him out, I'm not as confident in them going forward. However, they did win against a very good Kansas State team, even though it went all the way to overtime, even though it was controversial. And they also have a relatively easy path, but most importantly, they're in the driver's seat when it comes to making it to the conference championship with only 1 loss, everyone else with 2. And then even if they get another loss, those other teams that have lost to Texas actually need them to lose 2 more times. So they really are in the driver's seat. I really can't see them not making it to the conference championship at this point, which brings us to Kansas State, who dropped from number 1 down to 3. I still think, they played really well. They still, ever since starting that dual quarterback system, ever since they did a switch, I think a few weeks ago, and I know it hasn't been as much dual, but it really feels like they've figured something out as well. Maybe not quite as drastically as Oklahoma State, but they've really turned it on and, came away with a heartbreaker from this weekend. But I still really like their prospects going forward. Although they do have a matchup with Kansas still on their schedule. So that'll be a very good game to look forward to. Speaking of which, we've got Kansas that had another big win. And if you look at it, yes, they have 2 conference losses, but they are two very good teams. And so by all means, they played them well. And I think this is a very intriguing team going forward as well. So Kansas certainly not a team to mess with, even with backup quarterback being in. So Oklahoma, bummer for them. They spent several weeks at number 1 on our power rankings to drop all the way to number 5. But with that loss to Oklahoma State, that's just got to be heartbreaking because now their playoff hopes are completely shattered. I mean, they still have a chance to get in and make it to a New Year's 6, but playoffs are out of reach now. So what a bummer for them. It's only going to get harder as you get into the SEC. At number 6, we have West Virginia. And while they had a dominating win over my Cougars this weekend at a game which I attended, it was still just BYU, and as BYU shown, they're really just not that good this year. So a very good, very solid, impressive win from West Virginia, but I don't think as a body of work it was enough to move them up even higher. You could argue beyond above Oklahoma, but I still think Oklahoma's played really well, and that victory with Texas, I think, is still holding weight for me. At number 7, we have Iowa State. They did come down a spot. They did lose at home, granted to a good Kansas team, but I still think have them in this upper echelon of the conference, but right there at the bottom of it, but well ahead of our number 8 team. However, BYU plays Iowa State this weekend. It's a night game in Provo where BYU plays well. After this last weekend, and I'll get into BYU, I'm not totally sure they can do it. So Iowa State certainly has a chance to go in and make a statement there. But anyway, like I said, I'll get into BYU. So let's move on. So at number 8, we've got Texas Tech. This really felt like a must win, especially after losing to BYU. If they want any shot at being bowl eligible, they still have a very tough schedule ahead of them. But beating TCU, who comes in just after them, really was a must. And TCU has really just the wheels have come off for them. And granted, they are, on they're down onto their backup quarterback, but he lit up BYU and he's kind of struggled since then. So they are in a tough spot and may keep sliding. And Houston, on the other hand, has really shown a lot of toughness and a lot of grit. Even in their losses, they've had moments and flashes of real competitiveness. So out of the 4 newbies, right now, I've been most impressed with them. And they had a tough matchup with Baylor. That was also an exciting game. And Baylor, I think, has shown moments. Even though they've completely underperformed from what we expected preseason, I still think that they've shown flashes. And, they with that incredible victory to come back and beat UCF, who was 0-5 going into this game against Cincy this week, was, very confusing from a team that I think everyone expected to be the best of the new 4, and the way they recruit with Gus Malzahn as their head coach. Everyone had high expectations, and they've just really come up short. Now, in their defense, a lot of those games, like against Kansas State, were closer than, maybe the final score indicated. And, they had that heartbreaking loss to Baylor. But, they've really got to start winning some before. Even BYU has 2, if you count, counting Cincy, Big 12 victories. UCF has yet to beat one of the legacy conference members. And then at 13, we have BYU. It's tempted to drop them all the way to 14, but no, they beat Cincy. They beat Texas Tech, and they've earned that much. But man, their momentum is completely gone, and they've had some very embarrassing losses as of late. So whereas early on in the season they had a win at Arkansas, and they looked and pretty good again. Well, they had struggles, but they played Kansas relatively close. They gave up a couple touchdowns that definitely helped Kansas pull away. So it felt like BYU was close to figuring something out, but alas, they have not, unlike some of the teams that we see at the top of this list. And then lastly, we have lowly Cincy, and I'm not sure they are going to be able to move from this bottom spot for the rest of the season. So you see that a lot of arrows moving teams up and down. Very exciting weekend. All right, there you have it. Those are our power rankings of the Big 12 going into Week 11. Please let us know in the comments how you would rank them and what we got wrong. We really do love the comments and having that interaction, so please do it. And also be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really does help us a lot, and we really do appreciate it. And thank you, and we'll see you next time.